Morning, guys. I thought you might like to see what it looked like in the morning. We're a little late this morning, but I wanted to show you some of the drama that comes with living in a tiny house, and specifically with furniture. Uh, I need you to grab your fabric and move out of the way because you're right in the window. So this is part of the drama. Kaya had a birthday 2 days ago, and with any kind of present, with any kind of shift of any kind, you have a need to shift everything. And so I wanted to show you what we first started with as furniture. So I love bouncy balls because I use them when I'm editing. We also got these little pillows that act like back supports, and you can use them against a wall, you can use them against a chair, and these are part of the things that we use as furniture. But what it turns out is that in a tiny house, you can't necessarily have individual seating for everybody. The best thing we ever did was put in the gravel bench that is attached to the rocket stove, because it acts as a bed and it acts as a couch. But originally we bought these to go up in the attic, and what we found was that when you have an attic sleeping loft space and you're off grid, and so water's precious, you're not showering more than once a day just before bed, we found that we don't use these to sleep on. And so they had to come out of the attic. And the other thing we found, here I'll move these down, you'll see that anytime I need to switch position, I need to move things. And so having furniture that isn't built in is kind of a bad idea. This is a wall. This is a wall. There's tin behind it. You need to finish so you can go milk, honey. And so what I did instead is I took fabric and I stapled it to the top of the wood, and I tucked it in behind the bench, and I put foam. So now we don't even need these because there's foam in the wall that acts as a back support, and it's very thin, but it's enough so that you're quite comfortable. And this is fabric holding in that foam. And so what we're needing to do now is take these backrests that originally I thought were just such a fun, cozy idea because we could read stories up in the attic, but it turned out that when you're off grid, you do not go into your bed, and you don't even go onto your couch when you're dirty. So we don't really come inside this space during the day. We sit at the hard flooring in the kitchen, or we sit on the hard stairs because that can be swept up when we're very dirty. We save this cozy spot for after hours, after we've showered, when we're cuddling, when we're reading, when we're sleeping, and that way we're not having to wash sheets more than about once a month, maybe. Other things I wanted to show you was Kaya loves to sew, so she had a lot of fabric that she received for her birthday, and yet it's more than what we can fit in the house. So she's having to kind of go through it and decide what fabric she wants to keep and what we don't keep. And this is our only independent chair. This is our only one, and that's because it can be moved to other places and it does dual purpose. So I'm not sure what exactly I can show you for furniture in here. We have built-in seating around the table, and then this table pulls over, if I can get it to pull, into this space like that, so that I can get food out from underneath the bench, because this is where we keep our root storage. This here is potatoes and onions and squash, and then I have candles here, and then school books. And it is important that the table can move. The other thing I could do is hang the table from chains, because I need to be able to get underneath. And I am going to show you the bedroom if I can do it modestly. And Kaya is supposed to make that bed when she gets up in the morning. Whoever is the last person out of bed is the one who has to make the bed, and she didn't do it. But this is what the bed looks like. Again, I'll try really hard to stay modest since I'm still in my bathrobe. And this is how easy it is to make it in the morning. And maybe I can set this up and then try really hard not to flash you while I'm making this bed. But we found that we can't do a mattress because a mattress is too thick. A mattress would take up this much space and then we wouldn't have any head space. So what we do instead is foam, just a couple pieces of foam. All right, so the longer we're here, the simpler we make it. We used to have all sorts of stuff along this because I felt like I needed to hold on to knickknacks, and I felt like I needed to make it cozier. And what it turns out is that the less knickknacks, the simpler we make it. The more we like to be here, the easier it is to clean. And this year we have had 0 bug problems. But I think that's because we haven't tried to hold on to everything. So I'll show you how this is. These are my 2 baskets of fabric. I did finish off the baskets with some fabric that I liked so that it looked a little more decorative. That's all the fabric I have, and I'm a crafting snob. And then this is the girls' little bit of a mess. This is their bookshelf. And all it is a little wooden brace here. And the books that they have are Laura Ingalls Wilder and Little Women and Anna Green Gables. I'm kind of biased, and those are all the important books that I really wanted them to have. A Little Princess, Peter Pan, Mary Poppins, Winnie the Pooh, all that kind of thing. So those are the books that Kai is allowed to read, or Paige can come up and get once they're showered, but they're not allowed on the bed till they shower. And I have very, very few mementos. This picture was at my grandmother's, and that picture was made for my grandmother by my aunt. And let's see, somebody's asking about my head, so that I can almost sit up straight in here. But if we had a mattress in here, I would be extremely claustrophobic. We would be within like 18 inches of the ceiling if I had a real mattress in here. But the foam pads work really, really well. We don't have back problems when we're sleeping here. But I just wanted to, I think it's a process when you're a minimalist, and if you're a minimalist, especially living in a tiny house, I think it really brings home the point of looking around and seeing what can be multi-purpose, what do you really need. And this is our 3rd year in our little tiny cabin, and it gets simpler every single year. I used to store a lot more stuff, but what I have found is that we're so busy outside working on the property and playing with animals, and we're happy, and we don't need as much stuff. I don't need that much fabric. And as we go along, I use what fabric I have to do new projects, but I don't reacquire it. And I think I could actually eventually, I don't know if you can see it, I think I actually could eventually get rid of the wood stove and also get rid of the shelf that I use for washing dishes and make it more concise, because I find that once again, I have all sorts of baskets and belongings underneath our washing station that I never access. So it's food storage, but it's not food storage we're rotating through, and thus is it really food storage? Or is it just me collecting and then never using, which I think is kind of lazy and really wasteful. That money could go to food that we actually do rotate. But I never do butt my head. Up here, I have become acclimated to it to the point where I don't butt my head. So, oh, my pouting room. Yeah, this was from that one live stream where I don't remember why I was so frustrated. Oh, I think it was in the middle of trying to purchase the Oklahoma homestead. I felt like I had nothing to show and no reason to go on, because I so wanted that homestead. And yet we were months out from having tried to buy it, and I was going to do a live stream, and I just wasn't going to get into real clothes that day. I remember that. Oh, funny. So that's how we are this morning. When we first got into the tiny house, we did not insulate it. I didn't think it would be a big deal, but we could not keep heat in the building at night, and we couldn't keep heat out of the building during the day, and it was absolutely miserable. And so we super insulated it. I used rigid rigid insulation on the ends because there was not enough space between the beams to be able to put in the pink insulation. And then we put pink insulation on in every other bit, and we used the moisture barrier. And for the moisture barrier, we just used the plastic that was on the outside of the insulation. We didn't go buy new plastic, and it worked really well. We used a little staple gun. And now I just boiled water for tea, and even though it's in the 50s outside, it's perfectly warm here in the tiny house. We did not light a fire last night. We didn't need to. Just using a little bit of, just heating the water up for the showers was enough to warm the inside of the cabin up, and the same this morning for making my tea. So we're perfectly comfortable. It is really, really, really important to have a well-insulated home. Some of the majestic, gorgeous timber frame houses that we stayed in Mendocino, California, they were gorgeous little homes, but they were freezing. Even though they were in California, they were freezing. It didn't matter what we did with the wood stove, we could not get it to warm up in there. So in the summer, this stays very nice and cool without air conditioning, and in the winter, it stays really nice and warm without a huge amount of wood, even though we do have the rocket stove, which is incredibly efficient. If it wasn't well insulated, that would not really be the case. All right. Hey, GeoScholar, how are you? Avonlea said, sorry if I'm behind. Did you guys completely get out of the other property? We didn't. We're still in the middle of that, and they still don't have a clear title, but because we don't have renters in the house now, they may pull the funding because it's taking me time and money to get this house ready, either for another renter or to sell it or for us to be in it. There's work that needs to be done on it. And so the loan that we originally had for that other homestead, even if they could get the title together now, we would have to probably come back together and renegotiate on that other homestead because so much has changed. I mean, when you have a closing on a house that lasts 4 months, a lot can change in 4 months. And so we don't know if we're going to pursue that other homestead or not. The emotional side of me really loved that homestead, but maybe the financial side of me is not so happy with that homestead because it's a manufactured home and it took us so long. If we were to be able to get it, it took us 4 or 5 months, and that makes me really nervous if we ever needed to sell it. Even though a lot of it was title work, even the loan process itself, the underwriting was tedious, and so it makes me nervous that we would not be able to sell it if we needed to get out of it. RV Homesteader said, did you rent out your Idaho homestead or are you actually selling it? I haven't been keeping up. So we don't know yet. We have work that needs to be done, whether we want to sell it or whether we want to rent it. There's just piddly little things that happen when you've been gone for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And even though the renters took really good care of the property, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say big maintenance, but just stuff that was kind of deferred, stuff that didn't happen, that didn't necessarily damage the house, but just that it's just maintenance that needs to be done on the house. And we have Essential Mountain Homestead coming out on the 20th to help us with some of the concrete work. So that'll be fun. You guys will get to see him again. Make sure to go check him out. He's the one that let us use his sawmill and the lumber on his property to mill all of the rough cut lumber that we used on the inside of the cabin. I had a lot of fun with him that summer. He taught me a lot about construction and how to use tools that I thought were incredibly frightening. So we will see him on the 20th. But we do have an awful lot going on, just so much. And my dad comes out and helps me every day, and right now we're fixing the deck. Where we used to keep the goats underneath the deck, we have pulled a lot of that out, and we've cleaned it up and prettied up, and we're gonna recreate it so goats or dogs could go under it. But now that it will have had done to it what needs to be done to make it better. Yes, I do love it here. We work hard every day, and there's definitely a bounce in our step and a light in our eye, and we love being able to go out and work on the farm every day, and we love being around the animals, and we love our neighbors, so we really do love it here. Noah's Ark 1962 said, why can't you live in Idaho? John was a FedEx courier for a lot of years, and he had to be out in the cold and the weather and the snow every winter, and it kind of turned him against it. And so the reason that we left Idaho when he hurt his back was so that we could go to a warmer climate for him. And he has not been back more than 2 weeks in the last 3 years. He's come back for 2 weeks every year while we've been here, but he doesn't want to live here permanently. He really, really, really doesn't want to. And I'm trying to respect that, and thus that's why we come here in the summers when it's really hot in the south. And we go there in the winters. And at least for us, it works. I know that we miss him and he really misses us when we're here, but we don't handle heat very well and he doesn't handle cold very well. And a lot of people would think that was a really screwy way to have a marriage, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's harder on a marriage to try and force things as far as like, if I was in Oklahoma right now and I didn't have a homestead, I would be losing my mind, which is why we were so excited about that homestead. We were thinking it was finally a solution that meant that we could be together in the summers too, and then it fell through. So how frustrating was that? It was very, very frustrating. Let's see. James said, how come I can't leave you a super chat? Because I don't remember how to set it up. How do you set it up? Oh, it's been a long time since I used that. Little Bit to Heaven Homestead. So this is my friend Catherine. She does my live shows with me over on Facebook. Make sure to go check out her channel. Southwest New Mexico. Yes, John would love Southwest New Mexico most likely. My problem would be I love my irrigation water. I have, well, I don't know if I can show it to you. Can I try and show it to you? Do you see my little river out there? I have a little river out there right next to my property. And we have flood irrigation, which means that anything I want to grow here that can handle the cold, I can get water to it. So even though I love New Mexico and I love Catherine, I feel so spoiled by the way that we have set up our current homestead, the way that everything works. Now that I have my greenhouse, I can grow just about anything I want to. I'm such a prepper at heart. That is the reason why I have held on to this property so hard, is because I am a prepper at heart. I really struggle not to have the whole package when it comes to preparedness. And here on this property, I've created the whole package. We have a hand pump. We have a greenhouse. We have instant access water. We have so much, and I feel so spoiled by it. But that doesn't mean I'm not willing to move on to other places. It just means that I feel very insecure when I don't have my place as well prepared as this place is. Catherine says, we'll find you a river here. Can you take water out of the river there? Is it flood irrigation the same way it is here? Because I don't know. Grandpa's farm right again. Hey, how are ya? I hope, well, it's been pretty good here. It's been pretty good. Let's see, GeoScholar said you have to monetize your channel to get a super chat. Well, my channel's definitely monetized. I just haven't used super chat in a really long time, and I'd have to go. I used to do it, and I don't remember why I turned it off. Maybe I reset something. I think when I changed to the beta version of YouTube Editor, I think you have to go in and actually switch it over, and I haven't done that. Tony Sight said, thank you for sharing with us how nice it is to live away from the city. Well, we're not that far. We're about 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles away from the city, but the property we chose was definitely perfect for us because it is close, but it is also private, you know?
It's a mix of the two.
It is a mix of the two, exactly. How did milking go? Did it go well?
Really good.
Good.
So I taught the baby goat.
I can't see you, honey.
To me when I am milking.
You got it done?
So anytime she comes up to me while I'm milking, I go after her and bop her.
Well, how about if you be gentle and just have your sister hold her? Okay?
Yeah. But
All right.
she won't do it anymore. So
James said, I love you and taking care of your kids all by yourself. You're super mom. Happy Mother's Day. I grew up in the jewelry business and I hate Mother's Day. Can I just tell you that? And Christmas and Valentine's Day. I am a non-holiday girl, but I love the sentiment and your kindness in saying that. That is very kind of you to say that. Off-grid lifestyle said some people don't have a homestead or off-grid life. What's great? Or off-grid life. What's great? You have a beautiful place to come back and enjoy yourself. Well, and that's the thing is, originally we got this and it was very conventional. And the further along we got and the more I learned, the more I was able to do. And the reason we bought this was not necessarily because we wanted to live off-grid. It was because out of necessity when I was here in the summer, I needed somewhere to live and I wanted to develop an Airbnb. I didn't get this just specifically to live in myself. I wanted to add another layer of income for my homestead that would also allow me to have people here so I could teach them. That's why we wanted it originally. And since it turned out that we extended our lease with our renters, it meant that it was just easy for me to come back and live in it every year instead of continuing to develop it as an Airbnb. What, honey?
Can I use one of the strainers to pour the rest of the milk into 2 cups?
No, you must keep it in a jar because you need it for the rest of the day for the baby.
Yes.
Did you get a full...
Leftovers.
Okay, yes, that's fine, but don't make a mess and you need to wipe it up, okay?
Okay.
All right. So, if we were here and we decided not to sell it, then I would be either Airbnb-ing this side or we would be renting out the other side if we decided not to sell it. Because the homestead does need to pay for itself. A little bit to Hubin said, yes, there's irrigation rights along the river. Interesting. How old are they? Because here, we have a pretty good abundance of it, but you still have senior water rights and a certain amount you can and can't take out. We still have dry land here, but I was very particular when I bought this property that it came with water rights. Evan Leanne said, I have a huge compost pile that is working because of you. You have truly shown me so much and I'm grateful. I wish you could have seen the look on my hubby's face when I was tearing egg cartons. Makes such a difference having a big enough space. This year I was so frustrated because I did not build it as big as I usually do. And I couldn't be there to tend it and it never heated up, and it was the first time it's happened in like 8 years that I could not get my compost pile to heat up. And so I threw my hands in there and said, fine, going back to my old way of doing things. And I need a 4x8 compost bin because it's got to be big enough. The busy little house said you have a dream property. Love it so much. Thank you. I think it's a dream property. And the funny thing is I have so much of it that I don't use. It's 1.5 acres, but very little of it actually gets used. Like we have probably 0.2 acres. So 1/5 of an acre that is unused on the canal bank that we could graze goats on or we could do anything else with, and we just don't use it. And then we have that much again here behind the tiny cabin. We don't even graze goats on it. So if you do it methodically, and if you learn your property, you can, I mean, half of the property that we have here doesn't even get used because we don't need it. Hey, Danny, how are you? Hey, Lambert. Hey, Mandolin. A little bit to heaven. Homestead said your property and location are perfect. I wouldn't leave it. Well, we'll see what happens. John and I have had a lot of discussions trying to figure out what exactly we want to do and what is most beneficial.
I love Tri's milk.
I know, she has good milk, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Did you say some for your sister?
Yeah. Reason why I had 2 cups.
Okay, but don't overdo it because you'll make yourself sick again. And then you guys need to go and peel some hard-boiled eggs. Each of you have a hard-boiled egg.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll get you set on work. Okay. Oh, did you not already feed her?
No.
Okay, go ahead and feed her. So John and I have had a lot of discussions about that, about how things could work best. And since I haven't played with the Airbnb yet, personally, I would really, really like to play with setting it up and having it pretty. But that takes time because I want to set up a little garden around the house and have it beautiful and let people harvest from the garden and milk the goats. I really want it to be a good experience, not just somewhere for people to sleep at night. And in order to do that, it just takes time. And right now I don't have time because I'm getting the rental house put back together. But I mean, that is what homesteading is about, is it's time and it's effort, and that doesn't really ever go away because there's always another level to go to, another level to improve to. And that is the hard thing about homesteading in families, is if your spouse isn't really into homesteading, they're not going to understand the amount of time that you have to put into it to make it super productive. because I can be out there from 6 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night and still feel like there's more that I can do. And that never really goes away. And so if you're somebody who really likes to spend time with family, and that's what makes you happy in life, the smaller your homestead, the better. Because if our homestead was any bigger, I would be so overwhelmed, and it would be kind of pointless, because I think it would take away quality of life at that point. Bye, Tony. Grandpa's Farm Rides again said, "Are you back in Idaho? I am way behind with your videos." I am. We've been back for a week. And we're trying to, it's the easiest year so far. There's no bugs in the cabin this year. And we have simplified and got rid of or sold much of what we started out with over the last 2 years. And the less stuff we have, the easier the house gets. But it just means you really can't own much. Let's see. Avonlea Ann said, "I'm making compost tea of comforting water. Is that enough to take the place of your rabbit manure tea?" I don't know. But even if you're just adding 1 handful of rabbit manure to your tea, it makes a huge difference. You don't have to use a lot of rabbit manure. Let's see. Avonlea Ann said, "My spouse reminds me of your spouse. He gets it, but isn't really into it, but wants me happy." Exactly. That's how John feels about it. And it's what I'm a little concerned about with the homestead in Oklahoma that we wanted, is that it's 5 acres. And when you get into a property that big, you do need more specialized equipment than what you can really do on an 1.5 acres. I can take care of most things with my scythe and maybe a weed whacker here. On a 5-acre lot, if you don't have enough animals and fencing to keep it grazed, you have to mow it. You have to take care of a lot of fences, and that concerns me because I'm already kind of running at a full sprint here on an 1.5 acres. James said, "If you have to work that much to live on your land, you're a slave." Well, I guess the way I look at it is, if you set up your system right, then you're doing what you like to do, and the rest of it takes care of itself. And I think it really depends on where you are and what your resources are. I think we're meant to work, and we're meant to work hard, but I agree with you. If you work from sun up to sundown and your reward is not big enough, then yeah, I think it's too much. However, if the reward is big enough, if it's what you love to do, if it's pleasant work, if it pays you, if it keeps you healthy, then I don't think it's a form of slavery. I think it's a form of intentional living. But I think there's a very fine line there. And you have to always be mindful of it, because if you're not mindful of it, it can become drudgery very, very easily. And so I think you always have to be analyzing, is what I'm doing worth what I'm getting out of it? Because I think in homesteading you can get caught in that trap very, very quickly, where you're actually putting everything in and get nothing out. Hey, April. Good morning, Grandpa Jones. Busy little house said, "My dream of homesteading were put on hold for so long to raise a family, but my hubby works in the city, loves his job. Job doesn't understand all the work it takes to dream." Well, and a lot of it, as long as you're not in an apartment, which is very tricky to homestead in, but if you have your own home, you can homestead on a very, very tiny piece, as long as it is actually yours. You can put in a garden, you can put in raised beds, you can do a compost pile, you can have chickens, you can do rabbits, you can do so much. And if you can't have chickens, do quail. Our first homestead was on a very tiny piece of property, and it was extremely abundant. So if it's not 1.5 acres, you can do it on 1/10 of an acre. You can do it on so much. Even if all you have is concrete, do self-watering containers. Do what you can and live the dream in the moment, even if you're not on the perfect property. Noah's Ark said, "You aren't a slave to something you enjoy and get health benefits from." Exactly.
The baby goat is so hilarious.
Icy Spot said, "What area of Oklahoma are you looking at?" So the area we were looking at was east of Tulsa, is that space. So girls, I'm trying to think what I need you to go get done before Grandpa gets here. So have you hauled water already?
No need for it.
Are both of the jugs full?
Not full, but mostly.
Both of them are mostly full?
Do you want me to go out and haul them?
I want you to go pour the water into the hand washing station, and then you can scrub down the hand washing station so that it's super clean, okay? Just make sure to move the jugs away from the hand washing station before you start scrubbing so that none of the dirty water gets on the jugs, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Let's see. Busy Little House said, my choices come down to health and my family learning how to grow and learn basic skills. Yes, it's very important. My kids cut down 2 big hybrid poplars yesterday, and they did not hit the greenhouse and they did not hit the fence. I don't know how they did it, but they did it without me, and it was amazing. Mandolin asks, how's John doing with the horses and the horses with him? I'm actually really grateful that he has the horses to take care of. It gets him out of the house. And he hasn't whined very much. He's gone and picked up hay and carried it in the van. And we're thinking that we're going to meet halfway in between us because I need to switch out the van. I'm going to be here longer than I thought I was going to be. And he needs to take the rental car back to the rental agency so we're not getting charged for it anymore. The Busy Little House said took us 5 very hard years, but we own our own small house, 2 vehicles, and just under an acre. Debt-free was a lot of work. It is a lot of work. Pardon me. Barbara said, I love the fact that you're teaching your children so well and teaching them life skills. The nice thing is in this kind of situation, they teach a lot of it to themselves. They watch really carefully, sometimes more carefully than I want them to, and then they go and they try it themselves, and hopefully they ask permission first. Evan Leanne said, just try living in military housing, nothing but a few herbs and maybe some flowers too. I would struggle with that, I think. Unless I had a community garden close by, I think I would struggle. RV Homesteader said, I get the space issue. I am in an RV and preparing to travel with the milk goat and chickens after losing my husband in the homestead. Wow. Yeah, we thought about that when John hurt his back. We thought about bringing the animals along in a horse trailer when we traveled the country, but unless you have a destination, it can make your animals really, really sick to be traveling constantly. Kind of like people. I think people get sick too when they travel a lot and don't have routes, but maybe if you turned into a gypsy to where like it was a horse that was pulling your RV so that you were going slow and you had to have grazing area. I think that would be interesting for at least for a little bit. I think if you were in the right part of the country, could you do a wagon and a horse and travel that way like a gypsy because they took their livestock with them? It would be very interesting. If you had that sheep wagon that we went to see, if you guys remember a couple days ago, the sheep wagon, I think you could do that. Barbara said, my son says if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I think that is especially if you are making enough money at it. I think as long as it pays for your needs, I think that's very true. It doesn't mean you won't be tired at times and that you won't still be frustrated at times, but I think it is a different mindset, yes. Busy Little House said, great job on the trees, girls. They did a good job. Am I in a tiny house with a loft? Yes, this is the loft. And we finished the inside of it with wood that we milled ourselves with Essential Mountain Homesteading, so make sure to go check out his channel. Avalian has to run. Let's see, Icy Spot said, my aunt and uncle had dairy farm a bit east and south of Tulsa around Weber Falls and Porham. You got it done?
Yep.
And you scrubbed the bottom too with the scrub brush?
No.
Okay, scrub the whole thing because we need it to be super clean. And then go dump the gray water underneath the shower, okay? Just make sure that the containers aren't getting any of that dirty water on them, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, where we were looking was supposed to be the green part of Oklahoma for sure. How big is my tiny house? I've always wanted one. So ours is 12 by 32, and it is one of those little pre-built sheds. And we put in the insulation and we finished the inside ourselves. So we have about, it cost us about $8,000 just for the shed, and then $1,500 for the insulation, and then the rest of the inside finish was free except for some paint and some plaster. So okay, all right, so I'm gonna take off. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I tried to show you the rest of the house as far as furniture goes, because furniture is tricky in a tiny house, and I would not be surprised but what we do if we're here long enough this summer, we don't make more adjustments. We've made it easy, but I would like it to be more attractive, and I like to be able to take pretty pictures of it and not feel like there's eyesores. And so a lot of that has to do with storage space, and we'll see how I get as I get further along. Thanks, Off Grid Lifestyle. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to take off. Make sure to go check out those channels. Catherine over at Little Bits of Heaven Homestead, and Josh over at Essential Mountain Homestead, and Darwin over at the Honeydew Carpenter. He is getting the new rocket stove ready that's supposed to be a little bit more conventional and that can be put into a kit so you can make your own. And glad you guys are liking the live streams. They're definitely making it possible for me to keep doing videos when I don't have time to edit. So I love you guys. Hopefully you'll tune in